William Bingham.
You are also the most accomplished man in the history of Adams County that no one knows, except me. I am his wife, Nellie Arthur Bingham, and I have a few things to tell you about my George.
Very kind, my dear, but I think you exaggerate my importance.
I'm not a woman given to exaggeration. I was well known in our community as a humble Christian woman. A pillar, they'd say. Nellie is a pillar of the Congregational Church and of our Royal Neighbor sorority.
And a pillar you remain, my dear, even after all these years of lying here flat on your back.
But our purpose today is to talk about you. I will be happy to tell your story and let these good people decide if I exaggerate your historical omnipotence.
Will you let me begin, I hope?
Yes, I'm not one to interrupt.
Yes. Well, I was born in 1860 in the now long-lost village of Fordham on the banks of the Little Rush Creek.
You are a genuine son of Adams County, one of the first natives born here who was not an Indian.
Yes, my parents were Scotch-Irish from Belfast in Northern Ireland. They migrated to the United States, first to New York State and then to the town of Preston in Adams County.
I was not so fortunate, having been born in Illinois in 1864. My parents brought me here 4 years later when they purchased a farm within sight of where we stand today. I attended elementary school in Friendship and completed the high school course even though we had no real high school in our county at that time. And then I
taught in the one-room schools for a few terms until we met and married.
Oh, the wedding, July 23rd, 1889. I remember it well. We had everything planned. My mother worked her fingers to the bone, cleaning, cooking, preparing our house for the ceremony and the reception. And then you got the measles.
You will also remember, I hope, that I had just been elected sheriff. It was my first electoral victory at the age of 29.
You were the youngest sheriff ever elected here. But to get back to the wedding,
I was quarantined by my parents in my parents' house.
Fortunately, I had already contracted measles and was thus immune to further infestation. My parents and your parents had been similarly exposed, and nearly every one of my friends I cared to invite.
So, we had the wedding at my folks' farm instead of yours.
A breach of etiquette, but I understand given the circumstances.
I persevered in public service.
You and William Atchison were rivals.
Yes, we took turns in the sheriff's office. 1 year I was in and he was out.
And then he was in and you were out.
Precisely. But after a few years I grew tired of the swinging door at the sheriff's office.
You had already begun your long career of public service as a member of the Friendship School Board.
30 years.
You were also an officer of the County Fair Board. 35 years.
Special clerk to the county board. 20 years.
County treasurer, deputy county clerk, deputy clerk of circuit of court, village president.
A few years each here and there.
You were also chairman of the Republican Party in Adams County.
30 years.
And you served in the state legislature.
I won 3 terms in the state assembly, representing Adams and Marquette counties, 1911, 1913, and 1929.
The legislature of 1911 was a famous progressive body, was it not?
Oh, yes. In that season, we created the vocational technical college system, enforced civil service regulations to keep politics out of government employment, expanded the University of Wisconsin's extension system, acted legislation to protect Wisconsin's forests and waters, expanded the state park system, forced the railroads to reduce freight rates and pay more taxes, created the first injured workers' compensation program in the country, created the first progressive income tax in the United States,
and agreed to hold a referendum vote on whether women should be allowed to vote.
Yes, it was held in 1912.
And we lost.
Yes. But not in Adams County. We were one of only 2 counties in the state to vote in favor of voting rights for women.
You must have done something right. You were re-elected in 1912.
by a vote of 2,270 to 6.
The voters were wise, even if they were all men. You also had interests beyond the political. You invested in and managed the first bank in the county, bought and sold real estate, worked the home farms we inherited, and started the telephone.
Yes. I will tell this story. By the 1900s, the telephone had been in use in cities for many years, but rural areas were not served. I invested in and managed telephone exchanges and lines throughout Adams, Marquette, and Juneau counties. We installed the first switchboard in Friendship.
Yes, I was the very first telephone operator in town, and I connected all the calls.
You did not listen to the calls, did you?
I am not one to pry in the affairs of my neighbors. However, you'd be surprised how much you can learn if you're not trying to listen. But let's not forget the park.
We won't. By the 1930s, I was getting on in years, and I thought I should leave something permanent behind.
We did have a daughter, Mildred. She matured into a fine woman and married Charles Runge.
Yes, Millie was wonderful.
Certainly, she was my daughter.
To get back to the park. For many years, I owned 160 acres of land on Carter Creek in the east side of the highway north of Friendship. In the 1930s, I donated it to the State Conservation Commission, and Civilian Conservation Corps built a little wayside for travelers on the highway. It was called Binghams Park. After I passed away, the state acquired about 400 acres on the west side of the highway.
And it became the Russia Cree State Park, you know, and the wayside on the east side was abandoned.
If you rummage around in the bushes thereabouts, you can find remnants of the Bingham Park sign.
There is not much left there to remember your gift. And that brings us back to where we started, when I said George Bingham is the most accomplished man in the history of Adams County that nobody knows about.
We've done our best to correct that oversight today.
We're not finished, George. I have a lot more to say.
Oh, but not today, dear. Our time is up. Let us thank these people for visiting.
Yes, thank you. And if you want to learn more about my George, just contact me and I'll come back for a visit.